What's up, guys? This is Kephas.
All right, so the single button assistant is absolutely insane, and I'm finally getting into the PTR to test it out after weeks of trying to log in, crashing out, bugs, error logs. I've sent my error logs over to the forums to try to get some help, didn't get any, and then just kind of gave up for a while. Well, today I randomly decided to try to log in, and here I am. So whatever the issue was, it must have resolved itself, and I'm finally able to try out the single button assistant, and I'm here to tell you that it is insane. It's blowing my mind. I'm going to show you guys things I've learned, give you guys my thoughts on it, just kind of demonstrate it a little bit, do some hands-on looking at it and everything. And so I'm going to do my best to show as much as I can and show you guys some tricks and things I've learned. It's really fun. So that's what we're going to do today. I will have timestamps because brevity is not my strong suit, and there's a lot of different things I want to cover. So we're going to go ahead and jump on in. So if you don't know, I'm Kephas. I'm a disabled WoW player. I have visual impairment. It's very hard for me to track multiple cooldowns and procs and different things. And so I've been using an add-on called Gnome Sequencer Enhanced for many years. I've been making guides with that add-on for many years to help people like me play the game, trying to simplify the mechanics and the rotations the best I can using that tool. Well, now that tool is built into the game, and it's called Single Button Assistant, and it's absolutely insane what this thing can do. And so we're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts on it. So right now, I am playing a Ret Paladin. Ret Paladin is a great class to test this with. You can see my item level, it's pretty bad. I need to quit being a scrub and play the game more and actually focus on one class and not play a bunch of alts. But that's what it is right now. And so my raid bots DPS simmer, whatever the heck simulation said that I should be doing around 800,000 DPS. That's roughly my 100% if I'm really perfect, which no one is. And I think it's the big thing is like no one hits 100%. Maybe the best players are getting pretty close, but the average player is much lower, much further away from 100%. And I think that's where a tool like this can be a lot more effective than I think people realize. So that's something to think about. It really just depends on what kind of content you're doing and just different things like that. But either way. So this is it. Like normally you look at it like this. This is the single button assistant. It's up here in your spell book. You right click it. It'll show you everything that it can do. And this thing can do a lot. For Ret Paladins, by a lot, I mean it does everything. It can even use Final Reckoning, which is a ground targeting ability, which is insane because normally, like with a ground targeting ability, if you put it inside like a Gnome Sequencer macro, then you have to add a command because like you have to target the ground, and the way you can do that kind of automatically is either at cursor, which would put it over your cursor, like wherever your mouse is, or at player, where it would just drop it at your feet. And that's usually what like I would do a lot of times is I would use that one. This will put it over your target. So this is cheating. It's using some rules that the player base, like the players in terms of add-ons and macros, don't have access to. And it's so much smarter than anything I've ever seen in the things that it's able to do. Like here you go. You just go up and you just start hitting the button. And look, you just use Final Reckoning right over the target. It's using Divine Hammer. And there you just use Final Reckoning. Or not Final Reckoning, Final Verdict. Sorry. Forgive me if I get spells wrong. But I've even seen it, if I use Wake of Ashes, it'll even use, there it goes, look, it should use, yeah, Hammer of Light, bam. So Wake of Ashes into Hammer of Light. Did it execute that like perfectly flawlessly? Not necessarily, but it's doing a pretty good job, not overcapping Holy Power, using abilities as they become available. I can feel ever so slightly sluggish, like just with the slight increase to the global cooldown, but it's very slight, and I think that like you gotta get used to it after a little bit. So obviously that's going to cap the amount of damage you're gonna do. So right now I'm sitting at around 520,000. I'd say that's probably got me roughly what 65% of my best. Like if I was like perfect, obviously it's gonna be limiting. It's to be expected. But in terms of like where people are at, I think you can get by with it in a lot of situations if you need to use it. And I think that it will get you further than you might think. I'm using Final Verdict because I'm fighting one target. If I run over here to the cleave targets and I start hitting it, now it's using Divine Storm. So this is a very smart tool, and it knows when you're fighting multiple targets. And so not only can it use like ground targeting abilities over the target as needed, it will switch between single target and multi-target for you. And I think that like when you're comparing this to like GNOME Sequencer, for example, like I think that the benefit of like GNOME Sequencer is that it doesn't have the limitations of the global cooldown increase. It doesn't have that because it's just using your spells. However, GNOME Sequencer doesn't have access to the types of things this tool does that make it so smart. GNOME Sequencer, you're simply kind of like creating like a law of averages sequence the best you can to try and get it to perform as well as it can based on lots of testing, and your mileage may vary in a lot of situations. It does a great job at, certainly simplifying things. And I know that it's like some people use it and can get a lot out of it. GNOME Sequencer isn't going to know how much holy power you have. So like, despite your best efforts, you might occasionally overcap. Like that's just kind of the nature of it. This tool is a lot smarter than that. And I think that's a big advantage that using this has, over something like a GNOME Sequencer. And so that in that regard, like it's very powerful. And so it's very impressive, what this thing is able to do. I'd say like, again, like consider me an average player, average player with a disability. I'm not looking at this from like the top end perspective. I'm looking at it from an average player perspective. This is very effective. Okay, and there's a lot more to talk about there. But with that being said, like before we get into like the philosophical stuff, there are a few other things that I'd like to show you. So we're going to switch over to a different class. So this is my Fire Mage, and I think of all the classes that I've tried so far, the Fire Mage truly demonstrates so much of what this one button assistant can do compared to GNOME Sequencer, and just compared to, when you're playing the game. There are a lot of procs and different things with the Fire Mage, and I'm very impressed with what this thing can actually do. So we're going to go ahead and open up our tool here, and as you can see, there we go. So this can handle your rotation, and it'll even use shifting power, Scorch, if you need to use that, and also Meteor. Now again, Meteor is a ground targeting ability. This will put Meteor over your target, and also the same is true for Flame Strike. So it will spin your hot streaks on Flame Strike. If you're fighting enough multiple targets, it will switch over to that. So that's all this can do. You have to remember, this is a class where you have to get crit to heat up another crit. When you're heating up the hot streak, it will execute that as it's supposed to. It'll save Fire Blast, it'll save Phoenix Flames for when you're heating up to then put you in the hot streak. You can go watch my GNOME Sequencer video. I struggled a lot trying to make a Fire Mage macro that would do that as well as it could, and there were a lot of modifiers, different things I tried to do. Don't need any of that with this. This will cover all that for you. Now, one thing you'll notice is that combustion is not included inside of this sequence here. And so if you're say you just want to use combustion along with it, like you don't want to manage it separately, that's one of the big things that people are like, well, it doesn't manage my cooldowns for me. That's kind of a bummer. You can still have it manage your cooldowns. And here's how you do it. You make a macro and you just say single button assistant. So cast single button assistant. You can put that right in here and it'll cast it. And then you put combustion below that, and it'll use combustion on cooldown because it's an off global cooldown ability. Now, if you have trinkets, I have 2 use trinkets right here. So I can also do /use 13 and then /use 14. I can put those in. And now if I have it down here on my bar, this one right here, if I start using this, you'll see what it does here. So look there, it just used it. And now it also put me in combustion. As you can see, it's using heating up, and it's then using Phoenix Flames and Fire Blast to put me in the hot streak. And then it's using Pyroblast for when I'm in hot streak. Look at that. And it's managing all that for me. And as you can see, look, yeah, see my trinkets are on cooldown. So you can create a macro with single button assistant and then include your, like old school style, you can include your trinkets and your offensive cooldowns. If they're off the global cooldown, you can just put those in a macro. Now, one of the things I noticed is that it will interrupt your channeling. So like if you're using shifting power and you're spamming at this single button assistant, it will interrupt that. So what you might want to do is create a macro anyway with single button assistant and add a no channeling command. And I would think that should prevent you from interrupting it. So that might be something that you might want to do anyway, just to make sure you're not accidentally doing that. But yeah, look, I mean, this is crazy. Look, there I go, I'm on fire again. So yeah, look, it's using that. And so that's how you can, like, if you're playing, say, a warrior, a fury warrior, you've got avatar recklessness, like you have trinkets, you can put all that inside of a macro with single button assistant and it'll work. And so there are a number of classes where it's simple fix like that and you're good to go. Icy veins, pillar of frost, if you're a frost death knight, all those things. Look, there you go, there goes my trinket again. Like shifting power, like it's crazy, and it just does a crazy good job. And so, looking at my damage, 400,000 for my DPS, for my gear, not too bad. Not too bad at all. So this is something where, for me, I love Fire Mage. I have a hard time with it. That's why it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. And now I can run around on my Fire Mage and mess around. So that's really cool. Because even with just like heating up and hot streak, it's really hard to track those alerts right there, which are easy to see on a target dummy. But when I'm in the middle of a big fight and I'm trying to track everything, it can be difficult to manage all that. So it is definitely nice. A tool like this, I would definitely, for Fire Mage, this tool is a no-brainer. It's just way too smart not to use, even at the cost of the global cooldown increase. And so there's one other scenario I want to talk about. And there are some classes where you have abilities that aren't included, that aren't off the global cooldown. And I want to show you how, even with the single button assistant, you might still benefit from Gnome Sequencer. So we're going to go ahead and check that out now. And so now we're looking at my Windwalker Monk. And I thought this one was really interesting because if we open this up here, you can kind of see, again, as a Windwalker Monk, this is doing a lot. I mean, it's Blackout Kick, even Crackling Jade Lightning, it will use that. I'm assuming with the talents that kind of bring that into the rotation, but it will also manage Storm, Earth, and Fire, which is your offensive cooldown. It's kind of arbitrary what abilities are included and what aren't. It seems very strange, but yeah, I can even add Chi Burst and Jade Fire Stomp in here if I chose those talents. But overall, it's covering most of my rotation. But you might notice there are a couple of abilities in here that are not included. And so one, if I go back here, look, we don't have Invoke Zuin, we don't have Celestial Conduit, and we also don't have Touch of Death. Those are not included inside of this button. And so you would theoretically, you're going to need to manage those on separate buttons. Or what you can do what I'm trying out, you can use Gnome Sequencer to do this. And so you can see I've made a macro here for Windwalker. And so what this macro will do is, first button is single button assistant. And so it will use that. I've added no channeling to prevent myself from interrupting like Fists of Fury or Conduit of the Celestial Conduit. And so then we have Invoke Zuin, the White Tiger. It'll go to that one. And then it'll go to Celestial Conduit. And then it will go to Touch of Death. And then it'll cycle back up and do the one button assistant again and just kind of cycle through those. And so this is a way to use Gnome Sequencer along with the single button assistant to get abilities in that might not be in by default for whatever reason. And so now we're just going to go ahead and test it out. I'm able to use the action bar override. And so that's what I have set up here on the first button. And so I'm just kind of going to go up here and I'm just going to start pressing the button. And as you can see, it is using the single button assistant because it's using those abilities. But look, there it is. Conduit, Celestial Conduit is being used. And there is also Zuin, the White Tiger, as well. So it's taking care of those for me. And it's also just kind of using abilities that are available. So look, there goes Rising Sun Kick. There goes Blackout Kick. You can see the Monastery was up. So it's taking care of that. I believe that I'm fighting a single target, but it should use Spinning Crane Kick whenever there's a Dance of Chi-Ji proc, I would assume. There it goes. Oh no, that was Whirling Dragon Punch. There's Blackout Kick again. And so there, yeah, so it's taking care of that. I imagine if I'm fighting multiple targets, it would switch over to Spinning Crane Kick because Spinning Crane Kick was included. But yeah, this is definitely one where I can feel a slight sluggishness to this class for whatever reason. I can definitely feel it more here. I don't know if it's just because of this is like they're spinning crane kick, yeah, so it did use it there. This is definitely one of those classes where, I don't know, like maybe it feels like a faster paced class. I can kind of feel a little bit here, but as you can see, that's a way that I can add those other abilities in, and I can probably make that macro better. It was just more of a proof of concept to see if it would actually work. So there are ways I could probably improve that, but as you can see, yeah, like even though conduit and all that stuff isn't included in there, there's a way to include it with gnome sequencer. So there might even be some uses for gnome sequencer if, say, you just want to use the single button assistant for your classes for the most part, because it's just easier to set up and use. If you're thinking like that, then you might still have some classes like this where having a gnome sequencer macro might still be useful. That's kind of all the stuff that I've learned. Just ways to use it, ways to make it more effective. A lot of the reservations people have, like in terms of like it doesn't use your cooldowns, you can get around that. You can even use gnome sequencer with it, which is kind of cool. Again, you're still going to incur the penalty of the global cooldown when you use the single button assistant in a macro or in whatever, but you can get a lot out of it. So it's definitely going to make the game easier for a lot of people. More importantly, it's going to make the game more accessible for a lot of people, and I think that's a big deal. Should you use this over gnome sequencer? Well, as you just saw, there might be situations where you would consider using both. But in general, I mean, again, the thing is that the one button assistant is smarter. It's way smarter, but it has that penalty. The global cooldown penalty. Gnome sequencer does not have that penalty, and you can spend time with gnome sequencer and make a pretty decent macro. There are a lot of them out there. Mine are some minor, that do really well. It really just depends on the class, and I think that's going to be something as well. Is that a lot of it depends on the class. If you're playing fire mage and you're trying to simplify things, I would not use gnome sequencer. I would use the one button assistant. It's just way too smart, and it's just going to handle things in a way that a macro can't. Just the reality of it. But there are some classes, like even like Fury Warrior, Rep Paladin, that you can do a lot with a gnome sequencer macro, and you can do a pretty good job. But even in my experience, like the DPS felt fairly comparable. Like the big thing is, the thing to take away from this, whatever you do, if you're going to use this thing, you're not going to be as close to 100% damage, in terms of like your best. You're going to be kept away from that by design. Okay, neither, like gnome sequencer theoretically could get closer to it with a really well-made macro, but in general, like either way, you're never going to get like 100%, right? Or even like, which most people don't anyways, but you're never going to get like close to that, right? That's kind of the thing, just by the nature of how they function, right? So if you're someone that's like, look, I can go up here and I can just start hitting this thing. And this is taking care of my rotation for me. Like I'm not engaging at all. So this, like people that say like this is a learning tool, like no, it's not a learning tool. Like the highlighter might be a bit of a learning tool if it's accurate, but you're not gonna learn anything by using the one button assistant. You're not like, look, I won't even look. I'll look away from the screen. I can turn around and tend to my children if they need something and play this game, and I'm not looking at the screen right now. And it's taking care of everything for me for the most part. Like it literally, like I don't have to engage at all. And so that's something to talk about too. I mean, there's definitely things there, but if you're someone like me, like where like first off, like you struggle tracking all this stuff, this tool is great because it does enough damage to get you through some basic content, and you can have fun with the game. You can level characters, you can run delves, you could even probably do lower tiered difficulty like even maybe probably even do normal raids. If you're someone that like you're casual, you're not trying to do your best, you're not trying to like sweat and learn all the ins and outs of your class, you could use this as well. And you'll do okay. And believe me, people are right. Like when they say this will improve a lot of people's DPS, it will, you guys. It really will. Like the highest level of players, like this won't touch them, but like a lot of casual and even average players, this might actually boost their damage. It's actually pretty crazy. So that's also a situation as well. But if you're someone like you want to engage with your class, you want to engage with your rotation, you want to learn how to get better, you want to get into higher level content, like don't go into mythic 20s or whatever, mythic raids and use this. Just don't, because you're not going to perform well enough. Just avoid doing that because it's just not enough. That's just the reality of this situation. Personally, I'm okay with that because I think that skill expression and the need to perform well needs to be preserved, even in the name of accessibility. I think that it's still important for skill expression. I think it's important to engage with the game on all levels the best you can. The story, exploring, crafting your talents, and doing your rotation and learning how your class performs. You don't have to do that with this tool. And so if you're wanting to engage on that level, then you wouldn't want to use a tool like this. But for a lot of people, this is going to help them out a lot. So that's a good thing, And I think it's important that the developers and the community guide people accordingly. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't trash this for people that might need it, but also don't run to it and push people into it if it's not going to help them, right? I think that's just, again, you have to use your brain with stuff like this. You have to think critically and be smart about the way you view things and how you approach them. But in the long term, I certainly hope that we find other ways, more engaging ways that work well to help people engage with more of the game, rather than ways like this that kind of help us bypass it. And again, that's coming from somebody that's been using a GNOME sequencer add-on for many years. But overall, yeah, very powerful tool, very effective. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. But with all that being said, I will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is Kephas. Until next time.